and welcome. You are listening to the Still Standing podcast, hosted by Daniela Galdi, the founder of Still Standing Together, a support and empowerment organization that helps you get back on your feet. The Still Standing podcast offers you interviews, guidance, and solutions through everyday struggles and mental health improvement.
Welcome to episode 22 of the Still Standing podcast. Thank you all for showing up here today and coming here to better yourselves and work past or through processing your emotions or past experiences and looking forward to the future of improving your mental health. In this episode, I speak with Majet Reyes, a counselor in mental health who focuses on trauma therapy and has experience that includes working with veterans, healthcare professionals, women, first responders, and millennials. Majet helps people find fulfillment through counseling, coaching, and community. She owns Resilient Mindworks in Northern Liberties and Philadelphia that helps people struggling with anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. She is also the owner of DivaGirl, which empowers and educates women with fun classes, parties, conferences, and volunteer trips abroad. Majet also coaches singles and dating, self-esteem boosts, relationships and matchmaking, and consults with organizations for first responders and healthcare professionals. In this episode, Majet, who is a Resiliency Mentor, shares her perspective and her story of past traumatic experiences and how she coped until finding healthy ways through counseling and ultimately to land herself in the career as a mental health professional. She is working on making counseling cool and breaking the stigma. And you'll hear us speak about finding and reaching fulfillment and happiness. Majet shares that finding that fulfillment is looking at your past so you can live in the present and plan a fulfilling future. But you'll need to hear her process to understand the importance of processing our traumas in order to get to these happy times and work through avoidance and running away from what our past has helped us to become who we are today, the resilient, strong, and thriving individuals that we can be. Hi, Majet. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Hi, Daniela. I'm so happy to be here.
We were really both very excited for this because we both looked at our calendars, we said, and we knew today was the day. So I'm really excited to hear from you because I know a lot about what you do, but I don't think you and I have ever gone really deep into your background and what's gotten you here.
That is true. That is so true. And it's not like I don't want to tell my story. It's just that the opportunity is not there all the time, right? So that's why I'm super excited to be here and, and have you ask me the questions that, you want me to answer. And I've been listening to your podcast and I know that you are such an advocate for mental health and you have the same passion as mine, which is, making counseling cool or ending the stigma on mental health. So this is very exciting for me to be on your podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. No, I remember meeting you, Majet, and I just thought, I love this woman, her energy, everything about it. And so I thank you for saying that and for listening. And I really, I've already given everyone an introduction to who you are, but I know you focus a lot on resiliency, and that's what we're going to discuss today. So if you could just share a little bit about your perspective on resiliency before we get right into your story.
Yeah, totally. So the name of my practice is Resilient Mindworks, right? So I truly believe that resilience is such a strength that an individual has. And we are who we are because of the adversities that we've been through. And we are here on this earth right now talking to an individual, listening to us talking, because we were able to get through, or you are able to get through the adversities in your life, and you are here because of your resilient. So resilient is why you are here.
Oh, I love that. It really, when you've stopped to make me think about it, even in preparation of this, or when I see anything that you post, which I love, or anything you share in your groups or your social media, and it does make you think like, oh wow, okay, look at how many times we've overcome this situation, that situation. So what is, if you could just talk to us a little bit about situations in your life that helped you to get to this point of understanding and accepting your resiliency.
Wow, it took me a long time to be able to accept like where I am in life. Like it took, so I guess it took me 10 years and a semester in grad school before I seek help for mental health. And because I was so afraid of talking about the traumas that I have endured. So yeah, like I what happened to me before, like, is something that I kept running away from. The traumas that had happened to me, the adversities that, that I had went through, which a lot of us have, right? We all have our own adversities. And then when a lot of us also try to run away from that and not process it and expect to live a healthier or fulfilling life because of, by just running away from our past. And I was doing that for, over 10 years, trying to ignore my past, trying to ignore my trauma, and then just keeping myself busy doing other things. And it took me 10 years before I realized that I need to go to therapy, and a semester in grad school, to know that I need to process these things, to process these traumas, so that I can actually live a fulfilling life and be happy. So, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I was going to say that is what ultimately it really is all about, is the happiness piece and just being happy. I mean, I can think of so many times, Majet, where it's been a little bit darker and I'm like, I just want to be happy. Like it seems like such a hard place to reach. Did you ever experience that with everything you've gone through?
Yeah, no, totally. So it's um, what is happiness, right? Like what is being happy for us means, and everybody has their own interpretation of what happiness is for them. For me now, it's about fulfillment, and for knowing my purpose in life and fulfilling that. And that's what I use when I, work with individuals, is to help them really find fulfillment, so that they, through counseling and community, and finding that fulfillment is actually looking at your past, and so that we can live in the future, and you can live in the present and plan a fulfilling future. And for me, like, would you like me to like tell I'm okay telling the stories of the adversities that are really a big traumatic events that happen in my life, if that's okay for me to share.
As long as you are comfortable with that, I think that it does help to see that somebody who has gone through any type of traumatic experience can get to this place of talking about it. So please do. Yes, share with our listeners.
Yeah. So before, this is something that I cannot talk about. The trauma that happened to me, something that such a taboo for me, and nobody wants to hear it, right? You don't go to a party and people are like, hey, what kind of trauma you had, right? It's like nobody wants to hear about it. And so I didn't have the opportunity to process it. And when this happened to me, I was in my mid 20s. And during that time, I have a lot of friends, I have a great support system, but nobody wants to talk about what happened to me. And what happened to me was I was physically assaulted at work. I was working as a paramedic, and that was the job that I truly love. And then that happened to me. Everything just stopped, because my future, at that time was also retiring from being a paramedic. And that was taken away from me. And then I didn't know what to do then. I still worked as a paramedic during that time. I have a group of friends, but I moved on with my life. And that is kind of like what society and our family and friends expect us to do, right? After a traumatic event, move on. And I was just doing that. I was moving on. But then what's happening was I was getting triggered. And the trigger was making me angry, sad, and super anxious. And then, but I wasn't, dealing with the cause of all this. Like, where was this all coming from? And it was the trauma that keeps coming up. And it's coming up in so many different ways, like anger, anxiety, depression. And I would push that away by drinking. Oh, I drank a lot. 20s, I drank, I smoked pot, and I partied a lot. And I had a group. My friends were amazing. My family was amazing. My boyfriend at that time was amazing. But deep down inside, I was struggling. And I was like, I came to a point where, and you know what? I just want to sleep. I just want to forget about all this. That I actually, at one point, that one night, I decided that I was so tired from work. I was working as a medic, and I was so tired of thinking about like the triggers. And I was like, I just want to sleep because I had so much trouble sleeping too. And so I took a bottle of vodka and I made my favorite key lime martini, and it was delicious. It was my favorite, and I made that. Now I can't drink vodka. And then I have a little bit of pot left, smoked all of that, and then I took all my sleeping pills. And all I was thinking about is I just want to freaking sleep. I just want this all to stop. I just want to sleep. And then so I finished all that, and I remember Red Hot Chili Peppers like playing. What is that song? Zephyr song. And then I was just like, okay, I think I'm ready to sleep now. And if I don't wake up tomorrow, that's totally okay. That was my feeling at that time. So I went to bed. Obviously, I woke up. It was like late afternoon, and I was alive, and I had a big hangover and such a horrible headache, right? And at that point, I realized, oh, okay. So I'm still awake, but I had like a really good night's sleep. And I had this really bad taste in my mouth because of the Lunesta, the sleeping pills. And I was like, okay, so what do I do now? And at that point in my life, I still didn't go to a therapist. It still took me 10 years and a semester in grad school to seek help, because as a helper, so as a first responder, and a lot of medical professionals do this as well, and other people in other fields like feel that like if you're a helper, I don't need help, especially with an invisible disease like mental health. Like, that's shameful, right? I still didn't seek for counseling. I was like, no, I can do this on my own. So I woke up, and I think I went to Barnes and Noble, and dove into self-help. and, and I saw, it was the first time I saw Success Magazine. I don't know if you know Success Magazine, and they had a CD inside, and I listened to that, and my mentors were Jim Rohn, Darren Hardy, like, so I was like, man, this is great. I can totally do this, right, on my own, and but the anger was still there, the anxiety, the depression, but it's alleviating. There's hope now, right? Now I have hope. So there's nothing wrong with personal development, or going through these seminars and listening to all this self-help books, or you're doing that. Those are great. That helped me get through that part of my late 20s. And then I was still working as a medic too, but I knew that I needed to do something else at that point. I didn't know what. I didn't know what other field to go to, but I knew it has to come to an end. And then I got pregnant, and my beautiful daughter came to the world, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so like happy. Like, I have this awesome gift But then deep down inside, I was not being fulfilled. I was like, how can I continue working in a field that I do not enjoy and not feel so good about it? And continue living my life with a daughter, a baby, um, and and find happiness. There wasn't. I was like, okay, well, I can't tell a child, okay, you need to be happy and not be happy in my life because I am going to be the example for this kid. So, all right, like, what do I need to do? Right? What do I need to do? Still not seeing a therapist. Like, isn't that bananas? It's like that stigma, right? On mental health. I totally am that person. I was like, I can totally do this. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go back to school. Like, being a paramedic is helping people. I love it. I love the people that I work with. They're such amazing individuals. And I was like, but I needed to do something else. I needed to get out. Fortunately, I went to a DivaGirl conference in Canada, and I met all these beautiful women smiling and happy, and they're all business owners. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to be a business owner. That will make me happy. So I started a business. DivaGirl brought it to America, started doing that, having a newborn, working as a paramedic, having a significant other who has no clue about what I'm doing in life. And like you just had a daughter. Like, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do everything? And I was like, because I'm trying to find happiness. I didn't know it at that time. That's what I was trying to do. Right. I was trying to find happiness and fulfillment. And then, um, and then as I was reflecting on that, at that time, I didn't call it reflection. I guess I was just thinking at that time, right? But now moving forward, I know I was reflecting because, I got that from the self-help books and self-help seminars that, I listened to that, I have to think about what I want to do. So I have this business, but I'm starting out. I'm meeting all these amazing women who are such great examples for me. And then I also know that I needed to go back to school. For some reason, I just knew that. Either I'm going to nursing school or I'm going to PA schools because that's the typical next step for paramedics: become a nurse or become a PA or become a doctor, but staying in the medical field. So I tried to apply to nursing schools, couldn't get in. And my major before I became a paramedic was nursing. Couldn't get into a nursing school, couldn't get into a PA school. And then out of nowhere, sign from the universe, you can call it that. I call it that. A postcard from Jefferson University, back then it was Philadelphia University, saying that, oh, guess what? We have this new program, a grad school program, master's program for community and trauma counseling. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. Community, I love community. I have a great support system, but I don't know how to ask for help from them, right? And I have trauma. That something was resonating with the trauma. And I went to the program, I went to the orientation, fell in love at the orientation, and did the program. And that was when I realized I freaking need help. I need therapy. And like after the first semester, I went to therapy, process my trauma, process the assault that happened to me, process when I immigrated here from the Philippines. Being an immigrant, that's like, I was happy in the Philippines. I lived a happy life. And then we moved to the United States because the US, it's the US. It's the land of the free, land of opportunities. And so my parents and I left everything in the Philippines, came here to start from zero. And and that was freaking traumatic too. My parents having like great jobs in the Philippines and then coming here and starting from scratch. And that was a struggle. And for me, instead of like going straight to school, I had to work and help my family start over at 16. That was like, I didn't think that was trauma. So I was able to process, my assault, and all these other, little traumas that happened in my life. And those were the things that made me who I am now. So who I am now is an individual, a counselor who helps first responders and medical professionals, mainly who are struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, just like me, right? This this field who don't ask for help, this people who doesn't think counseling is cool, who doesn't think that we need to advocate for mental health, like people who thought the same way, who think the same way I thought before, because that was my thinking before, right? So that's who I became now, and through counseling and community, I was able to help people, um, and and that is my story of resiliency.
I I love it. No, I'm so glad, and I wanted you to continue to share because it's so interesting to see the timeline of how everything happened, because I think that that's also something that is kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word stigmatized, but it's a misconception. I'll use the word misconception that once we try, like once we get this help and we start to feel better, that everything's good again. And this is, I'll reference this for those of us listening that are maybe, I was a fitness instructor full time for a very long time, and I would work with somebody, they'd feel better after a few sessions, and I would say to them, okay, listen, do not go and do this certain activity, because there's a possibility that there's still something going on in there that we can't see, and you could re-injure yourself. And we get this euphoria because we're like, no, we feel so good, we're fixed. And I would probably say 99% of the time that person would come back and be, shame. And I hate to say shamefully, they were a little embarrassed sometimes of saying, they didn't have to be with me, but they would be embarrassed and they'd say, remember when you told me that something could still be happening in there and to not do that one thing that could set it off? I did it. And I think that happens, and we have these tools that we provide ourselves with, and we have these people, the wonderful people like yourself, who are there to help counsel us when we do need to get back to how we can be our most resilient self, how we can get over that hurdle, because life happens. So I'm really glad. It was so interesting, Majet, to just kind of visualize that timeline, and I hope that our listeners were doing that as well with me. And I have to also tell you that I don't think anyone's ever made me laugh, cry, have the chills, be sad, be optimistic again, all in like 5 minutes. So clearly your story is very compelling, and it's very uplifting to still, to hear you tell it, and you could feel how many times you had that aha moment for yourself, and to hear the place that you're at now of this, very joyous and energetic, and like you got it, like you understood. It's very comforting to those who are listening, and to myself, that eventually you start to understand and you start to know what you need.
Yeah, like it's definitely true, like what you just said, like understanding our story, right? And Daniela, I wasn't able to tell this story before. When I think about my trauma, that assault, like it will make me bawl, like I will cry, and like I can't even talk. And and then when I started first talking to my therapist about it, because I haven't told anyone, right? Like in a very, very long time, at least 10 years, like I started bawling at him. And then the second time I told it again, I was just choked up, or maybe more, a little cry, right? And then I joined a support group, and the support group, I was able to tell my story, and I just cried a little bit. And then next time I told the story, I just got choked up. And now I tell the story and I share it. There's no emotions attached to it anymore, because it's just a fact now. Like that, those traumas are just facts now. It doesn't define who I am. It's just, it happened. It sucked, but but it doesn't define me anymore. It's just a fact. So there's no emotions attached to it anymore. So for the listeners, like, you don't have to go on stage and talk about what happened to you, but there is that healing process of being able to tell your story and being able to understand it, telling your story, to someone you really trust, to a therapist or to a life coach or someone who is not gonna judge you, shame you, or blame you, right? So yeah, it can, but that healing process of being able to tell your story can get you to a point where in those events are just facts. So that's why I'm able to talk about it this way now. But before, I wasn't able to.
Before we head into part 2 of our interview with Majet, let's take a few moments to reflect and bring out the journal. Something brought you here to this podcast. Reflect on what brought you to listen to this episode. What do you need healing from? What experiences are triggering and bringing up negative emotions and feelings in your life?
No, it's incredible. And I want to thank you too. Again, I didn't get to thank you, but I thank you for sharing that, because that again, it's just a great example that we can get to a point where, and I love how you put this, that our trauma or anything that we need healing from, it becomes a fact and it doesn't define us. I would like to just talk to you about what makes therapy so special. I mean, I know, but I our stories are very similar, in terms of how we coped, how we, thought, okay, I can help myself by myself. I don't need anyone's help. And then also how long it took me, twice, two very important pivotal moments in my life, to actually go get therapy. And I think maybe a little difference we might have is, like, the second time I went to get, therapy and continue to do it now, I knew better. It was like I knew that it helped me before, and I still was not giving in to do it. So if you could share with others, because you are such a huge advocate of many things, but also seeking the professional help that we need, what makes therapy so special, or counseling, or just confiding in somebody who has the professional know-how to help us?
Aside from having a full hour talking about yourself, right? Like that, I'm like, you're going to have a full hour with someone who's going to listen to you, without, making you feel rushed or making you feel bad, or feeling guilty. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I love about therapy, right? So, like, you have that 1 hour to be able to tell your story, and the process, processing, things, processing the events that happen in your life, processing your thoughts. You don't have to do it alone, and being able to share that with someone who is compassionate, who is empathetic, non-judgmental, who has that, listening skills, and will challenge you too with questions that will make you truly reflect. Like, my therapist would ask me questions. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Like, it makes me pause and, like, I've never thought about that. Then that's another thing that, like, it's not all about the, just talking. There's a lot of reflection, because a therapist can help you answer some questions that you have. So this is one thing that I tell my clients in the very beginning. I tell them that, listen, you know yourself more than I do. I just met you, right? What I'm equipped with are questions that can help you find the answers deep down inside you, because you do have the answers. I'm just here to ask you the right questions to bring those all out. So, yeah, find that right person who can help you and challenge you to go deeper. Because sometimes it's so scary to go deeper. Sometimes I'm scared to go deeper still, but I have a therapist who I trust, and, who pushes me to go there.
It's definitely, it's a beautiful way of putting it. It reminds me of an image I recently saw that it's two hands like hand holding, which I think I personally needed since I'm very affectionate and we have not been able to show any type of physical affection with everything happening right now. But it just said, we got this. And it's so comforting. I know for myself, when I go to see my therapist and speak with them, that it almost feels like that. It feels like you constantly have somebody who's holding your hand, and then not in a way of where they're coddling you or you can't do it, but it's just that that person. I'm thinking of like a little angel on your shoulder. That person is there, like supporting you even from afar and even outside of your sessions. And it's a beautiful way that you put it with sharing about being able to help others surface what we're a bit, probably more than a bit, fearful to allow to come to that surface.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love like how you view your therapist, and how, it's a support that you have. And we all do need that support, right? We can't do everything alone.
Oh, absolutely. And my therapist knows that I love them very much. I tell them all the time. So, but it's you all. It really saves lives. It saves lives, and it's so great to hear that you were still able to work past the trauma and work past all those pivotal moments. I mean, you even had a baby within those years, and work past it and be able to still get to what you find fulfillment in, which is saving lives. You're just doing it in a different way. But I do want to touch on the support aspect of it, because I haven't stressed it enough, but your work within the community is all inspiring. It is so incredible. And I want you to talk a bit more about what it is that community can do for each other outside of your own private personal sessions with a professional.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you're asking me this question, because I don't think I don't even think I talk about it, a lot. And a community is, it's a space for us to feel accepted, right? And as humans, we want to be connected with people who can relate to us, who can resonate with us, who we can relate to, who we can, who resonates with us. Because when we know that we are not alone with the struggles that we're going through, it's empowering. Like, what? You feel that way too? Oh my God, you're having trouble with homeschooling too? Ah, thank God I'm not alone. Like, I love my child, but we have a love and hate relationship. You feel the same way? Awesome. Like those type of moments, like you do get that with individual sessions, or, well, no, you don't even get that with your therapist a lot, right? But when you're in a community, knowing that, like, you are able to be yourself, and you're accepted for who you are by people, by the group, and you're sharing the same struggles, the same joys, and same challenges, like, it's so inspiring. And it's funny, when I was doing my support group for first responders back last year in the fall, and it's mostly men, and I love this gentleman, and they realized that, like, we all have the same struggles. I thought I was alone. And with women, I think we are more accepted to have like girlfriends and like a group of friends or groups. But with men, there's not so much, it's not as many as what, like, as many as what's available for women. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so for them to be able to find a community or a support group wherein they realize that, I'm not alone with these struggles and what I want in life, then it feels good.
That's a great point. I do think that it's very inclusive, the work that you do, because it doesn't, you know, although it's specialized, it touches everyone in a different way and affects everyone in a different way. And it's just, I love hearing you speak about the men who you've also been able to help them to, realize that, oh wow, I'm not in this alone either, and it's okay for me to express that, because there's a lot of people out there in my place too. When you help people who are going through these hardships, I'll share with you, Majet. This is like, I have a lot of codes in my life that I'm trying to crack, like an investigator. One of the codes that I'm trying to crack, and I love hearing from others such as yourself on this, is specifically when there is a dark time or a hardship. Anything that right now in this moment is happening, and I think people can relate to this in terms of what you just mentioned on healthcare. What are tools that you use or that somebody else could use while they're going through it, while they're in the struggle?
Like right now, when I think about about what's going on globally right now, this pandemic that we're in, and a lot of people are feeling angry, sad, disgusted, and fearful, right? Like those feelings are normal. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with those feelings. And but it's those are super normal. I just want to reiterate that, like, how you're feeling is super duper normal. It's just that what we're going through, the entire world, what we're all going through, is not normal. It's abnormal. So this is an event that we cannot control, and it's abnormal, and our feelings that we have about it is normal. And being able to acknowledge the feeling, and being able to name it, like acknowledge the thought. We'll start with a thought. Acknowledge that thought, and then feel the feelings, feel the emotions that comes with that thought, and then understand why you're having those feelings and why you're having those thoughts. And it's usually from the programming we got when we're growing up, right? Or from the experiences that we've had in the past. And then having an action plan. So you're right. It's you can use that in not just during the pandemic, but in other struggles or challenges in our lives, right? It's like, know that this event, and reminding yourself, like, there's an event that's happening and it's abnormal. Whatever, even let's say that was a pandemic, or an event that, let's say it's an assault, or an accident, or a relationship struggle. Like, that is the abnormal part, and how you're feeling about it, however that may be, is normal. Now, call it out. Like, think about it, acknowledge that thought. This is the thought that I have about this event. And then call it out, name it, and name the feeling. So if that feeling is, let's say, fearful, okay, I feel afraid about this. Feel it. Don't run away from it and do something else and try to avoid it. I did that. It didn't work. So don't stop doing that. Feel it. If you need to go to sad town, if you're feeling sad, you need to go to sad town. Go to sad town, right? But don't live there. Feel the sadness. Don't run away from it. What I used to do is just, I'll go work out more. I'll go run more. I'll go drink more. I'll go dance more. I'll go party some more. I was just, because I didn't want to feel sad. So, but what I should have been doing, and what I do now, because I still get those moments, is that I feel that sad time. I feel the emotion. I take my time. I go to sad town. And then my action plan is, I let my significant other know that, hey, this Sunday, I'm just gonna be in bed, or I'm just gonna be on my massage chair, and call me, like in a few hours. Like, I have an action plan, or I have on my calendar, I need to talk to this person, right? That's the action plan for it. So yeah, so am I making sense?
You are making sense. So for the listeners, the program I use, we can't see each other, but I am nodding my head, and I am almost feeling as though you're in my mind and reading it. So, Majid, I love that second part, which I want to put emphasis on, which is the action plan, because the way you were reading my mind was, okay, if I'm allowed to take that mini vacation to Sad Town, which I've been to many, many times, well, that action plan seems to be the key point of not getting stuck there, not, planting some roots in Sad Town and never leaving again.
Yeah.
Would you say that I'm on, like, I'm on the right
You
track with
are
that?
on point. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just think that's so monumental, because that was the question in my head. Well, how do we prevent it from uh, trapping ourselves and paralyzing ourselves into those sad moments when we allow ourselves to actually be there? And I love how you said, it all goes back to verbalizing it. And you said you verbalize it to your partner, and you put it in your calendar. We can visualize it. We can see it. So I love that. So now we're talking about current and in the moment and present situations. What about moving forward, thinking about the whole idea of resilience as people move forward while they're going through this recovery process of healing and resurfacing emotions that we've suppressed in some way? uh, how do you suggest coping with triggers that might occur? And maybe you could explain trigger as well, because I do feel like we need to define that for people, because it can, I feel like it's been thrown around a lot. So I just want to make sure everybody has an understanding of it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you pointed that out because, like, trigger is something, it's very different from each individual, right? And some people don't understand, like, why that person is, feeling that way about a particular situation. For other people, it's not a big deal, but for other individuals, it is a big deal. And how we need to be more conscientious and empathetic about other people when it comes to triggers. So triggers is something that makes us recall an unpleasant experience that happened before, and it could be a smell. It could be a word. It could be an image. It could be many things, right? Even rain, or the environment, or sounds. Like those things can be triggering to some people, and it triggers them, reminds them of a not of an unpleasant event in their lives. So yeah, so that's a trigger. And how can we cope better when when we get triggered, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of it is cognitive behavioral therapy, which I use in my practice as well. And you're probably very familiar with it, right?
When I first took the step to get therapy, that's what I started with, was cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, and it's and anybody can have a CBT type of coping mechanism that they can use, and it's we call it a toolbox. And you mentioned this earlier, like coping mechanisms and the toolbox that we can have. Like we can all have a toolbox wherein we put in there some coping skills or coping mechanisms that we can take out when we start to be triggered. And the trigger can cause us anxiety or depression, or like sadness or depression, or anger or fear, like those things, right? Those trigger can cause those emotions. And now we go into our toolbox and look for some coping skills that we can use. And a lot of them, a lot of people use breathing, and breathing exercises. CBT is one of them. There are different types of CBT, and one thing that I use more commonly with my clients is changing your thought. So there's a negative thought. So there's a trigger, and the trigger causes a negative thought, and the negative thought causes a negative feeling, and the negative feeling produces a negative action. So being able to catch that thought right away, and being able to ask yourself, is that true? Is that negative thought true? No, it's not true, right? And changing that into something positive. So that's something that, a part of CBT that someone can practice by changing the thought. the thought process. And what else? And and just having a regular self-care routine can also help us battle uncertainties or uncertain situations when they come in, instead of us just reacting, but being able to pause and just and just be able to not react, but really think about what's appropriate in this situation. So the practice of mindfulness is really preparing us for uncertainties or as uncertain events.
No, it's so interesting, and I think you picked a great one for our listeners to it doesn't seem too overwhelming, and it doesn't seem too scary to try, so I love that you shared that one. And I want to share, I'm glad that you said about the self-care routine, because it's important, I feel, for myself and for others, to find those areas where you do feel safe, you feel comfort, um, and not to be confused with a comfort zone, but in a sense, that's in the reference that I'm about to make. That's not a bad place, I will say, in my opinion, but the comfort zone. And it's funny because it's something so simple that you made me think of. I have these warm booties that I put on. You can heat them up in the microwave, and they're amazing,
Oh my
Majet.
God,
And
my feet are always cold.
I was just going to say that my feet are always cold, and it literally shakes my whole body to a point where I can't focus on what I'm doing. And it's about, those things that make you feel comfort and make you feel good, and not ignoring them. And so I took those little booties out of their hiding spot in the closet, and I have them out because I did it the other night and I thought, wow, I just feel so much better. Why am I not continuing to do this? Why am I only making it an exclusive event for myself? And I think it can be applied the same way to therapy, or joining a support group, or going to one of your DivaGirl events. Why am I only allowing myself to feel good for this short time? Let's continue that.
And empower other people too, right? Because like through the support group, you're not only just being empowered, you're also sharing in that empowerment. Like you have a support group, and I think that's so amazing that like it's an outlet for people to get together. Not just it's not necessarily for fun, but being able to find people who can relate and support each other, support you. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I can't tell you how much that means to me, but I do want to say you have definitely empowered me, and I know you've empowered our listeners. But most importantly, Majet, I just want to thank you because I found so much comfort in this, and I know that everybody listening will also find comfort in hearing the energy in your voice, and what you're talking about is real, and they're real tools and they're real occurrences, but there's comfort in the fact that you were able to bounce back from all of that, and you can hear that in the way that you're sharing everything with us. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It is my pleasure. And thank you for those kind words. I'm glad that, like you appreciated what I have said and the stories I have shared. And I'm truly grateful to be here, and I'm truly grateful for you and what you are doing. We need more people like you to advocate for mental health, to end the stigma around it. And what I say, making counseling cool. If you, and you don't have to be a counselor, right? Or a mental health professional to do that. But through sharing your stories and through sharing your struggles, challenges, and the your resilience with others, it means a lot for people. So thank you, Daniela.
I appreciate that so much. Well, let's finish off this amazing podcast with something empowering from you. Like I ask every guest, if you could share for our listeners one piece of advice or a affirmation or self-talk piece that will help them in their process of becoming more resilient, please share that with us.
Can I share a quote?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's something that I have on my phone, and I look at it when I have doubts for asking for what I want. right? And it's by Dr. Seuss, and I look at it, and I remind myself to speak up when I read this, and it is, be who you are and say how you feel. Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter won't mind. So speak up, speak up, speak up, and be your true authentic self. Tell your truth. Tell your truth, girlfriend or boyfriend. Tell your truth.